This annoying error has lived with us for years. You tested and deployed your services, all good. The front end is talking to the backend is responding nice, but Chrome still slaps you with blocked by CORS policy. You open DevTools and the response is there, or it's empty. The first thing to remember is that CORS is enforced by the browser. Your API can receive a request, run code, and return a response, but the browser can still refuse to give that response to your JavaScript. That is why curl works while the app is broken. Curl is not doing browser CORS enforcement. The browser is. So when you see a CORS error, start with the browser's point of view. What page is running the JavaScript and what API is it trying to call? If the protocol, domain, or port is different, the browser treats that as a different origin. Localhost on one port and localhost on another port are different origins. Your app domain and your API domain are different origins. Your preview, deploy, and production API are different origins too. That is the reason localhost is such a good place to hide CORS bugs. In development, you might have a dev proxy, a framework rewrite, a permissive local middleware setting, or two services that only talk inside your machine. Then production moves the front end to one domain, the API to another domain, cookies become cross-site cookies, and suddenly the browser starts enforcing rules that you never really tested. Here is the first trick. When you debug CORS, do not begin by changing middleware randomly. Open DevTools, click the failed request, and look for the origin request header. That value is what the browser is asking the server to allow. If the response does not allow that exact origin, JavaScript does not get the response. The second trick is to separate normal requests from preflight requests. If the browser is about to send a cross-origin request with certain methods, content types, or custom headers, it sends an OPTIONS request first. You did not write that request in your front-end code, the browser created it to ask for permission. If that OPTIONS request fails, the real request never happens. This is where a lot of people lose time. They check the post route, the controller, the database query, or the auth handler, but the browser is stuck one step earlier. The API gateway might not route OPTIONS. Auth middleware might reject it because there is no session yet. A load balancer might answer it differently than the app. In that case, your actual endpoint can be completely fine and still unreachable from the browser. A practical check is simple. Look at the preflight response and ask 3 questions. Did it allow the origin that was sent? Did it allow the method the browser wanted to use? Did it allow the request headers the frontend wanted to include, like content type or authorization? If one of those is missing, the browser is doing exactly what it is supposed to do by stopping the next request. Now let's talk about the fix that causes the next bug, allowing everything. If your API is public and does not use cookies or credentials, a wildcard policy might be acceptable for that route. But if the request includes cookies, sessions, or credential browser requests, you cannot pair credentials with a wildcard origin. Browsers reject that combination. The quick workaround people reach for is reflecting whatever origin came in. The request says it came from some site, so the server echoes that site back as allowed. That can make the error disappear, but if there is no allowlist check before the echo, you have not configured trusted frontends. You have approved whichever site asked most recently. The safer version is boring, which is usually a good sign. Keep an explicit list of origins your product actually uses. Read the incoming origin. If it is in the list, return it as the allowed origin. If it is not in the list, do not approve it. That is the difference between a CORS policy and a CORS-shaped shrug. Cookies add another layer of annoyance. For cross-origin cookies to work, the frontend has to opt into sending credentials, the server has to allow credentials, the allowed origin has to be specific, and the cookie settings have to allow cross-site use over HTTPS. If any one of those is wrong, the symptom may not look like a CORS problem at first. It might look like the user keeps getting logged out, or the login works in Postman but not in the browser. When auth enters the picture, slow down and check both sides. Is the browser actually sending the cookie? Is the server allowing credentials? Is the response using a specific allowed origin instead of a wildcard? Are the cookie attributes correct for a cross-site browser request? You do not need to guess here. DevTools will show the request cookies, response headers, and cookie warnings if you know where to look. The next step is infrastructure. A CDN can cache a response with the wrong origin header. A reverse proxy can add duplicate CORS headers. An API gateway can handle Preflight differently than normal requests. So check the response at the edge, not only inside application logs. If your app says it returned one allowed origin, but the browser sees two CORS headers or a different one, the bug is probably outside the controller. Also, if responses vary by origin and a cache sits in front of them, the cache needs to treat origin as part of the variation. Otherwise, one frontend can accidentally receive headers meant for another frontend. At this point, the debugging loop is pretty mechanical. First, identify the origin header the browser sent. Second, check whether the failing request is a preflight or the final request. Third, inspect the response headers that actually reached the browser. Fourth, if credentials are involved, verify the front-end credential setting, the server credential setting, the allowed origin, and the cookie attributes together. Fifth, repeat the same test through the production domain, not only against the app server directly. Once you have fixed it, turn that loop into a test. Send the preflight request from an allowed origin and make sure it gets approved. Send one from a random origin and make sure it does not. Test a credentialed route and make sure it never returns a wildcard origin. You do not need a massive security platform for this. Even a few targeted integration checks can catch the copy-paste CORS bug before it reaches users. The mindset shift is this. CORS is a contract between the browser and your API about which frontends are allowed to read which responses. The annoying part is that cookies, preflight requests, proxies, and caches all participate in that contract. So next time you get the CORS error, try this order, look at the origin, check the preflight, check credentials, check the edge response. Then lock the behavior down with an allowlist and a couple of tests. Still annoying, definitely, but at least now it is annoying good. Thanks for watching.